Hi, Muki. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm good.
That's good. Thanks for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
And before we begin, I just thought, in the spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from everywhere that you may be listening in from. For me, that's the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung, and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And I pay my respects to the elders everywhere, past, present, and emerging. Um, so for a bit of an introduction, my name is Emilie and I work for Condesa Co.Lab. Joining me is Muki, of course, who works for Dormans, our partner in Kenya, and this is for our Window to Origin series. Thanks again for making time to do this with me, Muki. What time is it for you, by the way?
It is coming up to 9 a.m.
Okay, that's not so bad. It's coming up to 5 for me. So I guess I'd like to start off with your coffee story. I always like to ask people what their coffee story is because I feel like the coffee industry attracts people from really diverse backgrounds. So I'm curious how you fell into coffee and how did you get to where you are today?
I think like many people in the coffee industry in Australia and elsewhere in the world, I don't think many of us intended to end up where we are. It was, especially in Australia, I think a lot of us start as baristas or working in a cafe of some kind. I think my
So
first
true.
real coffee job was McDonald's, actually, like at a Mac cafe. Um, and
Interesting.
I worked in pubs for a while and got really sick of working at nighttime. And there was a cafe near the pub. I can't quite remember where this was, somewhere in the inner west. And I decided to give that a go. And was really lucky to work with some very passionate people who really sparked my interest in the coffee industry. And through those, I think I've been working coffee for about 10 years now, but through those early years, I was a barista. I managed cafes. I trained people. I roasted coffee. Um, and then in 2015, I saw a job come up for Condesa, and they were looking for a lab assistant. And I applied, and I think it was Tom or Ollie that replied to my email. And I came in for a crazy job interview where Ollie handed me a bunch of coffees and told me to roast it. And so I had to roast coffees that I
Trial
wasn't
by
familiar with
fire.
on a machine that I wasn't familiar with. But I think I did all right
Yeah, you must
because
have.
here I am. So that started my career with ecom. So I spent a few, I think it was 1 or 2 years at Condesa, initially as a lab assistant and a lab manager. And Tom asked me one day what I thought about moving to Brazil. So I moved to Brazil for 2 years as part of the ecom management training program, where I was able to work with Capricornio Coffees, another partner of ours, partner of Condesa, and part of the ecom group under the mentorship of Luis Saldana Rodriguez, a dear friend of mine.
Total
And also,
legend.
yes, so
That's
one of
amazing.
the managing directors of Capricornio Coffees, and also one of the owners of Fazenda California. And then I came back to Australia for a bit. And while there was a lot that I missed about living in Australia, I really missed working at Origin. I think I was definitely bitten by the bug, and I don't know. It's like the world, everything aligned for this job to have come up at that time. I applied, and here I am. 3 years ago now. No, 2 years ago now. And I moved here in December 2019, right before
Right
harvest
before all this.
and right before COVID. So it was a really interesting time to start a new job. But yeah,
That's
if,
amazing.
if if you had asked me back then as a baby barista, if I had ever thought, actually, you know what, didn't ask me, ask my mum, because she was terrified of the thought of me working in coffee. Um, but yeah, about 8 to 10 years later, now I'm here in Nairobi, Kenya, and yeah, I love it. I love
Yeah,
all parts of the industry, but I think I really have a soft spot for this side of things is where I feel like I belong.
definitely. I think just the fact that you get to feel the grit of the earth and the plant, like connect with the plants in a way that is really unique. I mean, not a lot of people in the industry get to do that. I think it's amazing. And I didn't realize that you worked in Brazil or you lived in Brazil. So that'll be interesting to see how it kind of compares. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I can definitely
it
touch
was
on that a little bit too.
okay.
It's
Awesome.
a very it was very interesting to go from Brazil with its volume. So for a bit of scope, Brazil produces at least 50 million bags. Usually fluctuates a bit, right, up and down. Um, and a small farm there would be several hectares at least. This year, we've estimated Kenya would produce about 600,000 bags. And that's gone up a little bit. Uh, a lot of our farmers are smallholder farmers, and they have maybe an acre, half an acre, so 50 to
Wow.
200 trees, depending. Yep.
Yeah, it's tiny
Um,
in comparison.
yeah, and just the difference in the landscape, the terroir, how people have to manage that. Brazil has all the technology, and like there are things that I do feel that other countries can take from Brazil. Like to work in Brazil, you get paid more. It's a bit more comfortable because you have access to technology. And I feel like in coffee we tend to romanticize things a little bit. Like, yeah, it's great that we hand pick coffee, but it's a really, really sucky job to hand harvest
Yeah.
coffee. Like, if maybe one day we get to the point where we can improve machine harvesting or some of these technologies, that we can produce really, really high quality coffee using these sort of technologies, because we can't expect people to hand pick coffee forever. It's awful, right?
Yeah.
You've got insects, it's hot, it's incredibly time consuming. So there are little things like this that I think as you travel from country to country, um, it only benefits productivity and efficiency and the well-being of the workers on the farms.
Yeah. Totally agree. Um, yeah, I'd like to unpick that a little bit more later. Just,
Sure.
but I was also wondering if you could give us a bit of a rundown on Dormans, like the history. Yeah, the company, I guess.
So the company as Dormans was started in 1950 as a coffee roastery by the Dormans. Over the years, it's changed into an exporter. We still do have a roasting arm side of the business that really supplies coffee only within Kenya and a little bit to the surrounding countries. Um, it joined ecom in about 2012, 2013, as far as I remember, somewhere around there. And uh, we had two groups here at the time. We had Dormans, and we also had Sungana, and those two companies merged when ecom took over Dormans. It's been, but I think overall it's been good for the business. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't realize it had been about 10 years, but that's cool.
yeah. So, well, a lot of the people here have worked in the industry for many, many years, so it wasn't too difficult to merge everyone together. Everyone knows each other. It's not so big.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
So because Kenya is such a beloved origin, I was wondering if you could explain to our viewers what makes Kenya different in terms of buying. And I know it's a loaded question because there are many layers to it, but I was wondering if you could break it down for us and give us sort of a walkthrough of the process. Like where does the coffee go once it's picked, or
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just add to this. Everything is of my opinion and my experience. As much as I would like to have someone else like Kennedy, my manager, my direct manager, who's been in the industry for about 30 years, speak on this, because at the end of the day, I've only been here 2 years. He's very camera shy, so I'm doing this on his behalf. It's just like anywhere, it's long and complicated. If we start with the harvesting, the majority of Kenyan's crop comes from smallholder farmers. At the moment, for what people are familiar with, it's predominantly clustered around central Kenya. And where that zone is, you can say, is between Nairobi and Mount Kenya. This would be areas that most people who bought Kenya coffee in the past would be familiar with. And there are distinct profiles that we sort of associate with that area. A lot of the farms are actually not that old in the grand scheme of things, because Kenyans weren't allowed to grow coffee until independence. Prior to that, most coffee was grown and controlled by white settlers, and British settlers predominantly, and clustered around the upper Nairobi area that we know today as Kiambu. If anyone has ever watched Out of Africa, that sort of gives you the gist of it.
Okay.
So there are many European farms like that came. People invested money there. Some of it still lingers, but the majority of the farms now are Kenyan owned, which I think is a wonderful thing. But within that central zone, it's mostly smallholder farmers that you'll see, which are maybe an acre, sometimes a little bit larger, but often too small to produce coffee, like processed coffee themselves. So in that case, they have to work with cooperative and pool together to process coffee. So from there, you'll say they would, let's say you're a smallholder farmer somewhere in Nyeri. You've signed an agreement with your local cooperative that you'll supply coffee there. You harvest your crop for the day. You take it to the wet mill on the designated day that they're open. You then have to sort the coffee. And this is one thing I do think, I've been told by other people as well, that Kenya does better than many other places, is the quality control in all levels of this. The harvest has to be perfectly red ripe. We're lucky that we've had a lot of NGOs and services present in the past that provide a lot of these guidelines and trainings. And then that beautifully, perfectly ripe cherry is then collected together. So as a farmer delivers, they'll weigh their clean, graded delivery, and then be given a cumulative kilo count. So you'll get your kilo for the day. So you'll wait for the day, and then that will be added. And then that that coffee at the end of the day would be processed together.
Okay.
They're just one of many, many steps. I feel like I need a flow chart to actually
Seriously, yeah. It's kind of many different layers because that's only the first sort of few steps.
Yeah. Well, you could say that's the first step from harvesting the cherry, but there's definitely steps prior to that as well, leading up.
Okay. And obviously, so the factories or the mills that the producers bring their coffee to via the agents that they've agreed to sell it through, um, or I guess they're finding buyers on their behalf. Is that how it works?
So the way that Kenya is structured is a little bit different to other places. I like to think of it as everyone has their own little part in the chain and they're good at that part. I know in some countries they might look on this poorly and say it's an unnecessary middleman or whatever, but I honestly think it does good because if you think of it in other structures, it's like having one person do everything. So you're very stretched. Or you have individual people who do everything really, really well. In this case, the marketing agents, in which we have Sustainable Management Services, SMS, and Coffee Management Services, CMS, they're really the part of the business that face the producer. And I think of them as a service provider. They will provide trainings and information. We have field agents who go to visit cooperatives and farmers to identify pest and disease, help assist with crop management. They can buy inputs from us if they need to. And the thing I think people don't understand is as a marketing agent, or because you're working with a particular cooperative or FCS or estate 1 year, doesn't mean that you work with them forever. It is up to the producer or the FCS on which marketing agent that they want to work with. So if you do not provide the service that that producer or board of the FCS desire, they can move to someone else. So I think that's a great thing because as a producer, you have the freedom of choice on who's going to represent you the best, who's going to give you the best service, give you the best assistance, and at the end of the day, connect you to the best buyers and get you the best price.
Yeah, I like that. It's, they're an expert who advocates for your coffee and helps you amend your soil and all that. I think it's great too. I think it's important. So the weight that you were talking about, how producers bring their coffee and then you get your weight for the day and then it's compiled and it's paid out, or it's processed together, and then I guess they get paid for that coffee as well as they bring it. Is that what an outturn is, or can you give me an explanation on outturns and
sure
how do you look at this and help us make decisions about the coffee that we buy?
So there's many layers to this process, but an outturn separate from how coffee is processed at an FCS. Let's say at a washing station, even with all the different deliveries, depending on the volume, it might not be kept separate. They're still going to gather it together. So maybe coffee that was processed in a week that's dried, as long as it hits the correct moisture level, will be grouped together. So you're not delivering, say, just 20 bags. You're going to deliver 100 bags. And that delivery from the washing station to the dry mill is what we call an outturn. Now, can we open that slide if you have it? Or
yeah, I can do it. I'll open it right now. Here we go.
Great. Okay, so one delivery of coffee to the dry mill becomes an outturn. So the outturn is that sequence of letters with a number in the middle that you see there. And I remember as a coffee, as a lab assistant, seeing these numbers come in. It was always confusing, right? Because you didn't know what they meant, and all Kenyan coffees come with them. So it's just a identification number for that lot of coffee. So to explain there, an outturn is a reference and identification number given to a lot of coffee once it has been delivered to a dry mill, also referred to as an OT number. And OT can be made of many screen sizes and qualities, but can only be composed of a single delivery. So one delivery of coffee, so a dry mill would receive it as parchment or as dried natural in the husk. Being Kenya, it's mostly parchment. So that is everything. That the only difference there is you'll get it as P1, P2, P3. P1 being the best of the processed coffee, so the highest grade of parchment. And let's pretend we had 100 bags of P1 delivered to Central Kenya Coffee Mill in this case. So Gatumboy is actually just down the road from Central Kenya Coffee Mill. And the bags come in 50 kilo bags. Reason being there is 50 kilos is what fits to a bag. Approximately 50 kilos of parchment fit into your standard coffee bag. Then that coffee is going to be milled, and from there we'll get all the different grades. So AA being your largest screen size, AB, one down. So AA is about, say, 16 to 18, 17, 18. AB would be 15, 16. PB, P-berries, C grades, which are 15 or 14 and under. And then we have all the undergrades, which we would say like T, TT. And they would start to have a bit more defect count. And as you underline, this coffee is you remove the parchment, it's separated into screens, it goes onto the density tables, and at the end, what we want to be left with in this case is your cleanest AA, which was delivered in here. You'll see the first letter of this outturn, 17, week 17 of the Kenyan coffee calendar, which starts on the 1st of October. So if you count the weeks of the year, this was delivered week 17 from the start of the coffee year. CK, which identifies the mill. We haven't, from Dormans, we work with another coffee mill that we also manage, Coffee NAF. In that case, it will be KF. And 0089, it was the 89th delivery of week 17 to Central Kenya Coffee Mill. So we could also have 17 KF 0089, 17 week 17 delivered to Coffee NAF Mill, 89th delivery as well. Most FCS and washing stations will deliver to the closest mill in their vicinity. So very rarely Gatumboy will ever deliver to Coffee NAF. Also because it makes no sense. It's like a 3-hour difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
So following the sequence of numbers and letters, you have Gatumboya, which is the factory or estate. Gatumboya, part of Barichu FCS, located near Karatina, Nyeri country. They're just south of Mount Kenya. On a good clear day, you might get to see Mount Kenya. And then AA, you have the screen size. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So hopefully that's broken down this strange thing that people always see you on the Kenyans and hope it must be.
I think so, and this is different to an ICO lot number, right? Like this is
Yes.
this is
Even
specific to Kenya.
Yep, you'll still receive an ICO lot number with each lot.
Okay. I'm curious. So the coffee calendar year in Kenya starts on the 1st of October.
Yep.
Is there like a coffee New Year celebration or not really? It's just kind of
I
goes.
think people are mostly just celebrating. Around that time of year is when a lot of people try to take a break because
Celebrating being done.
quieter. Usually October, we're heading into the new season. You often don't see any coffee yet, but everyone's getting prepared.
Okay.
So harvest in Kenya generally begins around December, January can go. This year it's been early, but around December, January is where it's sort of supposed to be at. And then the bulk of the real auction trading happens January through to say March. And then we'll dip into a bit of a quiet period for a bit as we wait for early crop or fly crop. And then it'll start to pick up a little bit again and then drop down again heading into the new year. We do have some different areas in Kenya. So while we mostly focus on central Kenya, we have the west and a little bit of coffee to the east. And because of the difference in terrain and weather, your crop times are a tiny bit different from each other there. So the year is steady. And while we're focusing on Kenya, we're Dormans ourselves. We keep busy because we also work out of Rwanda and Tanzania. So we go through this cycle of when one finishes, let's move on to the country.
No rest for the wicked, right? Awesome. So obviously when we get this number and it has a factory or state that we bought from in the past that we know is good and they've worked with our sustainable managed service, or it just sounds familiar, that's normally what we go for, and that's kind of that's how we buy our coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I was curious because we both know each other. Disclaimer: we know each other from our experience in International Women in Coffee Alliance.
Yep.
I was curious if we're seeing more women come to the front, not just as producers, but as mill managers, floor managers, marketing agents, that kind of thing.
I would love to.
Okay.
I actually feel Kenya, I think everywhere there's room for improvement, there's so many women who work in coffee in Kenya in all different levels, and they're remarkable, talented, knowledgeable women in every part of the field. We in Dormans, it was fantastic to step into that office that first day, and there's women everywhere. They're on the trade desk, in the logistics team, in QC, in management. It's really fantastic to see. Yeah, there's no. It just feels really equal. I think there's still room to improve in many places. I think unfortunately in cooperatives, I don't see much representation yet, because it can be really traditional in those cooperative structures. I think this is going to segue a tiny bit, but we also had to remember Kenya is still while it's modernizing, it's still a very tribal country, and some of the way things are managed are very tied up in that kind of structure. So often you'll see when you meet up with boards, it's full of older men, and they might have been what you would consider, if not in coffee, they would have been a tribal elder or someone of that level of importance. And it's very difficult for women to get into that structure. While there are some, and we do work with several who are fantastic. So we do have some farms like, estates or cooperatives like Gachatha is a great one. The farm manager there, the mill manager there is a wonderful lady. And Gidway FCS, who have Karatu, Karinga, Kabiru. They have several women on the board and in the management team. But it's slow going on that side. But you're fighting a lot of tradition at the same time. But I think it will continue to shift as a new generation steps up. But overall, there are some fantastic women in coffee here, really strong personalities who are really fighting for coffee to move forward here. We have some estates that are coming up with women who are really taking the reins of promoting their coffee and being involved with people at FCSs, that's right, the cooperatives, I should say, and many people in the trading side of things. And I think that's what I really love about being on this side of coffee is there are so many women. And I think something that growing up in coffee at the time that I did in Australia, it was such a boys' club. And it was really pleasant here that in Brazil, it was a bit similar too, but there are just so many women just doing their thing and doing it really, really well.
That's amazing. That's so amazing to hear.
They're not. They should be. I wish they were a little bit more outspoken and people could see, like, just how many are there just getting on and making sure things get done. But yeah, like I have the pleasure of working with all of them and many buyers who are women that just quietly go about and do their thing.
I love that. Yeah, that's so awesome to hear. So some of these questions are from a total Kenyan coffee fanatic and a dear friend of mine in Michigan. I believe his handle is at Dr. Joel24. But he was wondering, as roasters try to respond to the interest and pressure from the customers to provide something new that to their customers, hold on, let me ask this again. So as roasters try to respond to the interest and pressure from their customers to provide something new, how possible is lot differentiation? Or is Kenya better served continuing to develop new varieties as they've done in the past, or experiment further with processing? Or what are some of the ways that you see Kenya can provide something new for those people?
So that's a bit of a difficult one, because where I see Kenya really needs to improve first is productivity. And that just step one. We were very, very lucky here that the conditions are excellent. And it's sort of just by fluke that people produce amazing quality coffee. Like, you have volcanic soil, we have the altitude, we have the climate, we have fantastic varieties. Both SLs, I think Ruru is actually very solid, Batian as well. And some older varieties exist beyond that. But Kenya is not very productive. Like I said before, we only produce 600,000 bags. While it's very expensive coffee comparative to the rest of the world, our quality is just, I honestly think it's unparalleled. There are not many places where you can cup 100 coffees and have almost all of them cup above 86.
Still there. This has an 89 scoring coffee.
But there we still need to increase productivity here while maintaining quality. We do have some places, including ourselves, who are experimenting a little bit with naturals and other methods of processing. But I think for the farmers and the producers to get the most out of what they're doing, they need to increase productivity here, because the cost of production is relative to what they produce is too high. And I think there is demand there for Kenyan coffee. I mean, we also sell out of coffee typically in a year. There are definitely not many origins who can say that. I've never been in a position before where I have to say to someone, sorry, I don't have coffee to sell you.
Sold out, sorry.
But that actually happens here. But I do think innovation is important, and it is definitely somewhere where Kenya is a bit lacking due to the fact that they've just had it so good in many ways. Like the traditionally processed and harvested coffee here is so good the way it is that you do sometimes think like, oh, do you really need to do anything to change that? But I think over the years we're going to see an increase in a bit of naturals. There's definitely demand for those processed coffees as well. And I think these little things, as long as it's done properly, and what I mean by that is I think it's irresponsible to turn up at a place and to demand someone to do something that's very different from the norm, especially if they're taking all the risk for it. So I wouldn't want to turn up at a farm and tell the farmer, you should only produce naturals, or you should only produce this new anaerobic fermentation coffee because it might make you more money. But more to work with a producer who may be interested in doing this well, let's look at your crop. Let's see if it's possible. Let's see what your quality is like. Let's do a portion of it like this, so a reasonable amount, and just try to do it the best. Let's say this year, let's focus on 10 bags or something different, and we'll also make sure that your majority of your crop is done really well. And this is just a bit of an added bonus. So you get, it doesn't require too much additional work. You get a good return on it if it's really, really good. But we'll continue to focus on the main crop, traditionally processed crop as well, to make sure that they have the best quality out of that. So it does more like a value add for them to do these things and potentially have a little bit more income from it.
And less risk from only doing.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that over the coming years. There's definitely interest. We have farmers who approach us for this information. And it is really great to see sometimes people are experimenting on their own as well. Like sometimes I go visit a place and they've put up a covered drying bed just out of stuff that they've seen on the internet, or like they were experimented with doing some naturals. But I do want to go back there again, is that people have to be aware of how risky this can be if someone doesn't understand what they're doing, because you are messing with someone's livelihood. So while if it works, it's fantastic. But I've also seen many a time where I've gone to somewhere, put in, say, a parabolic dryer, so like a greenhouse to dry their coffee, without really understanding how to do it well. And I've seen it in other places, like I've seen it happen in Brazil too, because it's simple enough, right? You've seen a photo of it, you can put it together. Buyers seem to love it. But if you don't do it right, you can really damage the quality of your coffee, because the coffee can sweat. It can be exposed to too intense heat. You can, because of the very moist conditions and the temperature, you can get mold and spoilage. And these are the sort of things that you can't tell from an image.
The implications.
So it's why important that we need to work with farmers as a partnership so that we can help them do this properly. it's wonderful if they want to do these things, but then why should they take all the risk on them when they
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Totally agree. Well, thank you. So some of these questions are from a total Kenya coffee fanatic and a dear friend in Michigan. I believe his handle's at Dr. Joel 24. But he would like to know, what should coffee drinkers at the very end of the supply chain know about the way growing and processing works in Kenya? And I guess you kind of explained it, but anything in particular? Like,
well, the price is right. If anything, they should pay more.
Yeah. I agree.
Kenya is probably known as being one of the most expensive coffees. I think generally it is the most expensive coffee, even outside like the average price of coffee. It's very common for a Kenyan AA to be £5, and even Panama. Like, yeah, of course, you have the fantastic desktop Panama lots that demand these crazy prices, but as like a just normal lot, like we consider a normal lot for Kenya to be $5 a pound, and people say it's expensive, but I think that's really where coffee should be, if not higher. And it's
especially with the scarcity and the quality that you highlighted. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What you're paying is well deserved. If not, they deserve a little bit more. There's so much hard work that goes into this. There's so many hands. Recently, about 2 months ago, I had a buyer visit from the UK, and they had some friends with them who worked in commodities. I think one worked in oil or something like that, and another worked in supply chain management. But this was their first exposure to coffee, and as a commodity, while it's not a very romantic term, it is so intensive, like labor intensive, throughout the whole system of coffee. And I know it can be a bit much for just your average consumer to consider, but it's such an undervalued product that if someone can afford to pay a little bit more, just do it. You can save money somewhere else. But
I totally agree.
Yeah, and I think coffee.
Yeah, I agree, but maybe I'm a little biased because we love coffee, but that's probably one of the hills I'll die on. Is a lot of people are happy to spend $10 on a glass of wine, just a glass, not a whole bottle, and jump up and down about $5 for a cup of coffee. It's like, well, it passes through so many more hands.
Thousands of hands that go through this process. Like if I could explain from the field out to you getting it, but it would take me many hours.
Yeah. We got the abridged version.
For someone to have a cup of Kenyan coffee, it's been sorted so many times. It's been cupped so many times. Like hands have touched that throughout the chain so many times. And at $5 per pound, it's still not enough. And I know it seems a bit much, but yeah.
I agree. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
He would also ask, how have the intended effects on farm sustainability and agricultural stability with the newer varieties like Rui 11 and Batian impacted coffee producers so far?
So this is something more I learned with Louise, which essentially is varieties don't really matter so much as your management of them. And with so many factors at play, climate, the change in climate every year not being consistent, different pests and diseases because of temperature changes, and we can't just rely on saying that we've developed a variety that could work and could work. Because I think what we've mostly seen is, farmers will, like something like SL, right, which was really common here, produces really fantastic quality coffee, but required quite a lot of care and input. And then we had something like Ruru, which was developed that was supposed to lessen that. But until you really have it out in the field, you don't really see the effects of it. Like, sure, maybe it requires a little bit less work, but then you have such change in climate and environment that it sort of nullifies some of that. I think varieties aren't the sole answer. There's a whole mix of things that we should think of. If there are coffee trees already there, are we already doing the most that we can do to get out of this coffee that's already here, rather than just promoting ripping up and putting in new trees every time? Because I don't think that's the sole answer. I think it's great that we're continuing to develop these things, because coffee is a bit of a monocrop, and if something severe happens, we have the potential to lose all of it, right? So this innovation and research and development is really important, but I don't think it's an answer to rip up everything that we have and replace it with a new variety. It has to go hand in hand with crop management and education for producers to do the best with what they currently have and be more efficient and more sustainable with what's already there.
So true. And I think from an agricultural background, I heard it's not the crops that you're growing, but it's the soil that you're cultivating. Because if you have really good soil, you could grow anything. And because coffee is a monocrop, it can be super damaging to the soil. So I agree that the sustainable managed service and putting inputs that are healthy for the soil, I think that'll do more in terms of farm sustainability and agricultural stability. So next question. What do the producers/factories in Kenya need from consuming countries to ensure that the supply of great coffee continues on?
Money. If I can make it really simple, is pay the best that you can. If you can afford to reward people for their hard work, please do it. I'm really thankful that I've been able to work here with some really fantastic buyers who have great relationships with their estates or their cooperatives that they work with, and are willing to pay that bit extra to try to reward the producer, to reinvest in their property or invest in their children. All this counts. Yep. So money and continued support make all the difference. If you as a buyer can develop a continued relationship with people here, whether it's the estate, what I really like to promote is try to do with everyone down the supply chain. As a buyer, you can connect with the farmer.
Totally. Especially in this day and age where, technology is at our fingertips. Like, I get to talk to you in Nairobi and I'm in Melbourne.
I've been able to do video calls with producers and buyers as well. Like that's all possible. You can most people have WhatsApp. Everyone has a phone nowadays. And you're definitely welcome to connect with your producer, with your co-op managers, whoever you like. But as well as like for us, the marketing agents, we have people who would definitely be welcome to connect with, and they do with buyers as well. If you have interest in management, like how they're assisting with managing things on these estates and co-ops, or their projects on sustainability, as well as us. Like for us Dormans, we try to help everyone on both sides get the right information, be connected. Yeah, try to make things go smoothly. So it's just, I guess when we come back to that, you can ask them yourself. they
that's true.
people. So if as a buyer you want to, just ask. I have many who are in direct contact with their farmers. So
I love that. Ask them yourself.
yeah.
Well, on that note, in your perspective, what's next for Kenya? What's next for Dormans, and what's next for you?
So I'm very lucky here that we have a young, innovative team. When I say young, I don't think we're like that young, but we're young enough. It's a real pleasure to work with all of them, and we have some great people in management who are allowing us to really go with our ideas and innovate in some fields. So, like the natural project that we're running out of here in Kenya, we're not doing a lot of it, but the focus is to do the best quality that we can in a volume that we can. And we have projects like this running out of some, like Rwanda. We're expanding it into Rwanda. We might see a little bit more out of it coming in out of Tanzania as well. So yeah, it won't just be natural. We'll try other things too, but we're trying to be sustainable and responsible with it. So not going wild and, like I said before, keeping it a reasonable volume. I'm definitely here for a few more years. I don't think I'll be moving out of Kenya anytime soon at this point, because I love my job. I love Kenya. It's very easy to fall in this country, and
You're gonna join IWCA Kenya when it starts up?
Yeah, hopefully after this harvest season, maybe we'll take a look at it. Hopefully be more connected with people in this industry, because unfortunately with me starting during COVID, I actually haven't been able to meet a lot of people outside of my little circle of coffee people here, just because we shifted from doing the auctions physically to now digitally. Virtually. Haven't had any events in the last couple of years, so hopefully as that settles back down and things open up again, I can meet and connect with more people in Kenya, but also people around the world. So this year we've got quite some of us attending SEA in Boston in April. We're headed to World of Coffee as well, and I'll be at MICE in September.
Yay!
So yeah, and like these things are these events are important. It's great to connect with people face to face. As much as we've been able to do everything digitally and over the internet and whatnot, it's just really pleasant to be able to sit with someone and talk face to face and have these sort of conversations where these little questions and stories come up that you can't really get out of an email or a phone call sometimes. And I'm really looking forward to it.
It's completely different when you're actually in their presence, and it's a more organic chat than just a meeting with an agenda or a quick text message that loses the tone. I agree. It's completely different, and I'm excited to be more face to face for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you again, Muki, for taking the time to do this, and thanks everyone for listening in to our Window to Origin chat. See you next time.
Yeah, welcome. And if anyone has any more questions, they're always welcome to shoot me an email or hit me up on Instagram or something. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Maybe we can put that in the bio. I don't know, somewhere down below.
So just reach
somewhere. Sounds good.
Cool.
Thanks,
Nice.
Muki.